So I've got a lot of ground to cover if we're going to achieve some parity.
I mean, that's up to you, man. If not, I'm happy to roast you for the entire episode.
Oh, great. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Hello, De Niro Nation, and welcome to Our Hero De Niro, the only podcast watching and recapping Robert De Niro's entire filmography in random order. I'm Mike, joined as ever by my co-host, Mike.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a podcaster.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, how long's that really been? I guess podcasts have existed for a few decades now.
I think about 20 years.
Yeah, yep, okay. So maybe you don't have a very long memory. That's okay. Sure, yeah, same. And to Mike's quippy little remark there, we are very excited today to be here to discuss the 1990 Martin Scorsese film, Goodfellas, one of the big boys. Mike, what do you think of Goodfellas? You ever seen this film before we rolled it for the podcast?
You know what's crazy? I actually have never seen the film in its entirety, but I think it's one of those staples of cable TV from a while back.
On TNT.
Yeah. So
they
exactly.
know drama.
They know drama, yeah. So I had strong memeries of a few scenes in the film, but I didn't know the overall narrative. I just knew Ray Liotta, voiceover narration, flushing cocaine down the toilet. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's kind of a fun little discussion topic, actually, that I didn't have. So before we get into it, what are the scenes that you think of, having just seen snippets of it on TV before you sat down and watched it in earnest?
So it was the flushing cocaine down the toilet, and Joe Pesci asking Ray Liotta if he's funny or how he's funny.
Yeah, okay.
I think those two and Michael Imperioli being shot in the foot. Those are the three scenes that I distinctly remembered when they came up when I watched the film in its entirety for the podcast. I thought, I'm getting a real sense of deja vu here, a glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah. We talked about things from mob films that I see on Reels on Instagram during the Bronx Tale episode a few weeks ago. And the spider scene is a thing that I see on Instagram Reels from mob movies sometimes. That's iconic. Michael Imperioli.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go. Well, that's interesting. I have seen this film before many times, but not in a long time. So my memory of it isn't, I think, quite so fragmented and informed by cable television. But for me, it's definitely the, how am I funny? Scene for sure is a big one, and the spider scene because I saw it on Instagram Reels recently, and I think about the Atlantis killing of Billy Batts. Is that the character's name?
Oh yeah.
When Joe Pesci kills him, that's one that I think of a lot. I hear Atlantis by Donovan sometimes, and it always makes me think of that scene. I'd never listened to Donovan before I watched this movie for the first time, probably when I was maybe 13 or 14, and got me on a big Donovan kick, that scene. So there you go. A little bit about Goodfellas for us to open up the episode. As I stated, this was a film from 1990 and was directed by Martin Scorsese. It was written by a gentleman named Nicholas Pileggi and Scorsese. They shared writing credit, and it was adapted by a very journalistic nonfiction book on mafia culture by the Pileggi gentleman named Wise Guy. I'll talk a little bit about the book later on. The stars Robert De Niro, Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci, Lorraine Bracco, and Paul Sorvino, and was a pretty reasonable box office success, grossing $47.1 million on a $25 million budget. But what was really notable about it at the time was just how universal the acclaim for it was. It was nominated for 6 Oscars that year. Pesci won for Best Supporting Actor, and it's widely considered Scorsese's best film, one of the greatest films of all time, particularly in the gangster genre. And some critics, including Roger Ebert, felt it transcended even The Godfather as the greatest gangster film of all time. The film is extremely documentarian in nature. It's reasonably historically accurate in literal terms, but extremely historically accurate in more figurative, spiritual terms. I'll talk a little bit about that distinction later on. And there's a lot to say about De Niro's performance. I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot throughout the episode, but it's a very unique performance in De Niro's catalog of great performances. It doesn't have the operatic grandeur of Vito Corleone or the frantic naturalism of a performance like Jake LaMotta. He plays Jimmy very quietly. He's basically a good manager and a really effective administrator with a lot of strong self-control. And you can always tell there's violence bubbling underneath the surface, but you rarely see it. You mostly see him playing this character who's acting all the time, essentially, who's always keeping his impulses in check, which is a really richly textured and nuanced performance. What did you think of De Niro's performance in Goodfellas?
I thought it was phenomenal in that supporting role, and I think his character Jimmy strikes a very interesting contrast to Joe Pesci as Tommy. Joe Pesci's character Tommy is obviously much more outwardly violent and incapable of controlling those impulses. But I think Jimmy is actually the scarier character because he is capable of that control, and you can tell that violence for him, he's able to turn it on like flipping a switch in a way that is, I think, much more terrifying because you never know, when he's going to turn on you. Joe Pesci, you can kind of see it coming a little bit.
You're always worried about him.
Yeah. Don't egg him on.
He's a freak. Yep. He'll be egged on several times throughout the story, and we'll see. It never turns out well for anybody involved. So a little bit of kind of extra nuance about the production here. The main cast did extensive research into their characters. So remember, this is pretty historically accurate. Each of these main characters is based on a real mob figure from this story. And De Niro's character, Jimmy Conway, is based on a real gentleman named Jimmy Burke. And De Niro did extensive research talking to a lot of folks who knew Jimmy Burke to make sure that he got his speech patterns, his mannerisms, the way he carried himself completely accurate, which is just a testament to De Niro's commitment to that kind of method acting. And Scorsese encouraged improvisation extensively throughout the Goodfellas production, even within the context of his previous catalog of films, which are very improvisational in nature. Scorsese tended to do multiple takes of important scenes, asking the characters to do a lot of improv and then cut things together to create what he thought was the best version of those scenes. This is really interesting. He talks about this a lot in that Mr. Scorsese documentary on Apple TV. It's really cool kind of hearing him talk about the process that he and Thelma had editing together Goodfellas, kind of from all that just essentially amalgamated footage of all these improv takes that he had the actors do. There's a lot of famous improv scenes in Goodfellas. I don't know if you know this, Mike, but the most famous one is the funny house scene by Joe Pesci. Yes, that scene was totally improvised. It's actually based on a true story that Joe Pesci experienced when he was waiting tables. We talked about this a little bit in the Raging Bull episode. When De Niro and Scorsese recruited Joe Pesci to play Jake LaMotta's brother in Raging Bull, he had actually decided to quit acting and was waiting tables. And so while he was in his period of his life waiting tables, he waited on a mobster, and he was the Henry Hill character in the discussion with the mobster and told him that he thought he was funny, and the guy got very aggressive with him. And so he was kind of acting the mobster's role in that conversation he'd had decades prior while waiting tables. And Ray Liotta, Henry Hill, didn't know that it was going to happen. And so his response to Joe Pesci in the scene is also totally improv and natural. And it's just, you get a lot of really magic stuff from that, don't you? That scene is incredible. And it's amazing to know that they were just making it up as they went, essentially.
Yeah, it's a big difference in directorial styles compared to someone like Clint Eastwood, who does one take and then he's like, okay, let's move the fuck on. I'm 95 years old. I don't have time for this.
I mentioned this earlier, but the initial screenplay was written by Pileggi, directly adapting his book. But Scorsese, when he read it, wanted to rewrite a lot, so they ended up sharing writing credit. And we've talked about this a little bit before. Scorsese does not write his films, and so this was his first script credit since Mean Streets, almost 20 years prior. It's actually Paul Schrader who writes many of Scorsese's films between 1970 and 1990. It's one of the greats. Something I've been really enjoying lately, I sent Caroline a text about this last night, but I didn't mention it to you, is Paul Schrader writing reviews of his own movies on Letterboxd. Have you seen any of these?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, he
had a great one of Taxi Driver yesterday that I really enjoyed reading.
He's not posting to Letterboxd. It's someone reposting.
Well, yeah, somebody's posting stuff he writes on Facebook, right? I mean, it's for all intents and purposes. What does it really matter? So there you go. That's kind of my opening. Before we get into the recap, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, I'm excited to get into it.
Okay. So I have divided my recap into essentially 3 acts. I don't know if they follow the 3-act structure of the film necessarily, but narratively, it's what I think is important to convey about the film. And before I start talking about it, I want to share a little bit of context about what it feels like to watch this film, because this is one of those films that we're going to do a recap of. And I really cannot stress in severe enough terms the degree to which my recap will not do this film justice. It's a totally crazy movie. It has an extremely stream of consciousness style. It has extensive voiceover narration. It's really tightly edited. It has very frantic cinematography, and there's 65 needle drops, and there is no way that a stead description of what happens plot-wise in this film is going to convey anything about it. So if you haven't seen Goodfellas, you should pause the podcast and go watch Goodfellas right now. It's a classic film. Go watch the movie.
Turn on your television, go to TNT. I'm sure it's playing right now. the edited for cable version.
I read on Wikipedia that since maybe 2018 or 2019, they've been putting a special content warning at the beginning of Goodfellas that it reflects values that are no longer in step with modern culture when they air it on TNT.
It's very funny. That? It's a mobster movie. Did it ever reflect the values of the culture of the time?
Right, it's like in 1990 was this kind of violent racism seen as acceptable in the general culture? I don't really think so.
I'll tell you, it is kind of fun watching these mob movies, these Italian centric movies, because they really position Italians as the Earth's greatest people. It's kind of fun watching as a half Italian guy. I'm like, man, Italians really just think they're better than everyone else in these films. It's kind of fun. I don't agree with it, but it's kind of fun.
Are you familiar with a little thing from history called the Roman Empire?
I guess that's a great point.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I am not, I'm Italian, but I am not a, what's the word for when you think your race is better than other races? ethnocentrism, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't believe that. I don't believe Italians are better than other races. But there's a mythology there, I think, for them to draw on in that kind of self-mythologizing and justification of that kind of ethnocentrism, which is interesting. The Roman Empire was a pretty big deal in human history, I think. The film opens in media res in 1970 to 3 men driving on the highway. Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci, and our Robert De Niro face reveal immediately. When did it happen, Mike?
Yeah, bright and early at 57 seconds into the film.
Yeah, I wondered when we were kind of teeing this off whether it was actually even before we hit the 1 minute mark, because I did not check, and I guess it was. I guessed it was at 105 or 110. So there you go, right away. And they hear a sound from the back of the car. They pull over, and someone in the trunk whom they thought was dead is still alive and trying to escape, and he protests, but De Niro and Pesci kill him. We get our first Henry Hill, Ray Liotta narration. Mike referenced this in the opening of the episode. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. We get the title card, more credits. It's 1950 now, and a lot of narration from Henry about the allure of gangster life and how he gets slowly more and more involved against his parents' protest. And he describes his heritage as half Irish and half Sicilian. We meet Paulie. Paulie is a local capo in Henry's neighborhood to remind folks about kind of the structure of mafia organizations. So at the top you have the boss, and then there's the underboss, who's kind of the second in command, and the consigliere, who's chief advisor essentially, and then reporting directly to the boss and the underboss are the captains, the capo regimes, and so that is the role that Paulie plays in the Lucchese crime family in this story. He's extremely senior. He essentially runs a crew as a captain, reporting to the boss.
Played by the late great Paul Sorvino.
There you go. Thank you for saying so. I did mention him, but I forgot to say which character he plays. So he's described as a capo, and he's a very suspicious, very dispositionally conservative sort of guy. He doesn't like phones. He doesn't like having conferences with more than one person. He only communicates through trusted intermediaries, usually indirectly. So he can never be observed with awareness or participation in crimes. So it just kind of gets at how discerning and careful this guy is. I will say, and we'll come back to this at the end of the story, that we are going to realize later that all of Henry's narration is happening from the end of the story, which I think recontextualizes kind of the way he describes things. And it's something that I struggled a little bit. It's what I think is One of the film's kind of glaring faults that I observed as I was watching a little bit more critically this time is just the way the narration kind of characterizes Henry and his arc. But we'll come back to that later. He meets Jimmy Conway, whom we already saw once on screen in the Media Res opening, Robert De Niro. He's about 10 years older than Henry, and Henry is struck by how cool and self-confident he is. He's always handing out money to everybody. He's just a very, very smooth operator, really, really cool guy who is feared for his murderous brutality, but what he's really passionate about is stealing. He's a prolific hijacker.
Klepto.
And he's a kleptomaniac, and he does much of his theft non-violently in a way that I also think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that he's a brutal murderer, but he never kills anybody.
Right.
He's it's just his reputation as a dangerous, violent psychopath and his willingness to pay everybody off that lets him just steal prolifically without ever hurting anybody. It's awesome. Honestly.
That is very cool to have your reputation precede you in that way, where you can just take shit.
Just take whatever you want. Nobody's going to stop you. They know you'll fucking kill them.
Yeah.
Like,
you walk into the CVS, you want that pack of Gillette Fusion razor blades, they're going to let you walk out with them.
no, wrong. He would be going in for Nicorette gum. So Henry starts getting more and more involved with crimes, and he is selling stolen cigarettes one day and gets arrested. He gets arraigned. He goes to court, but gets off with a slap on the wrist and thinks that his mob overlords will be angry, but they're all really proud of him for handling the getting pinched in an honorable fashion. And Jimmy tells him that he learned the two most important things in life: quote, "Never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut."
Yeah.
We get a time jump ahead 8 years to 1963 at the local Idlewild Airport. Henry explains via narration that this airport is part of Paulie's territory and that his gang steals a lot of stuff from there. We meet Joe Pesci. He plays a character named Tommy DeVito. We had actually seen child version of Joe Pesci in a couple of the early 1955 scenes, but it's not very important. I don't think he ever speaks, but it just kind of establishes for us as viewers that that Joe Pesci and Ray Liotta's characters, Tommy and Henry, they've known each other since they were kids. They kind of came up together in the gang, starting as teenagers. We see that Henry and Jimmy are planning a big heist of the Air France airline, which they expect to net $500,000 in cash. And we get, as we mentioned at the top, the funny how scene. Tommy and Henry are sitting with a bunch of their mob compatriots at a table at this restaurant. I think the restaurant's called the Bamboo Lounge, right? I didn't write it down. The Bamboo Lounge.
I certainly didn't write it down.
It's kind of like a tiki bar. You and me, like a local tiki bar around here. So it's kind of like that style of tiki bar. And we kind of learn in this scene everything that we need to know about Tommy as a character. It's really, really good writing and performance. Tommy is really funny. He's intensely charismatic. He's telling a story and everybody is losing it. There's an iconic gif from this scene of Ray Liotta laughing at Joe Pesci's story.
That's one of the
It's like one of
Goodfellas
the gifs. Like it's like one of the 10 or 20 that you think of, like when you think of gifs of him just like laughing maniacally, hysterically at the story that Joe Pesci is telling. And he says in the scene, Tommy, you're really funny. And they just have this crazy back and forth of like maybe 10 or 15 exchanges where Tommy is saying, "Funny how? Like I'm like a clown to you," or something to that effect. And you can see Henry getting more and more uncomfortable. Like he sees that he said something wrong and there's suddenly this looming threat of violence. And so we understand that everybody knows about Tommy, that he's a very funny guy. He's very charismatic, but he is incredibly emotional and very impulsive and extremely violent and angry. And he can turn on a dime. Yep.
We should we should have done a read through of that scene.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we would have done it really well.
Oh yeah.
And finally, Henry realizes that Tommy is bluffing and calls his bluff, and the tension is dispelled. The owner of the restaurant, a guy named Sonny, comes over and reminds Tommy in front of all of his friends that he owes him $7,000 on an unpaid bar tab. And Tommy is really angry and embarrassed, and he assaults the owner by breaking a glass on his forehead.
That's bad. You know, in movies, they use breakable glass for those sorts of scenes. In real life, that'd really fuck you up, wouldn't it?
Right. That's the thing. Like, I don't know. I'm just trying to think about it. Like I'm thinking about that kind of glass, right? We have glasses in our house. They're a little thin. You know, like I think I could break it on someone's forehead pretty easily. But those heavy glasses that you have in like a restaurant that have a slightly thicker, heavier base to prevent them from falling over, I don't know if it would break on somebody's forehead. Like, I think you'd just like crack their fucking skull if you like hit them in the face with the base of the glass as hard as you can. Like, you really hurt somebody.
Yeah, you don't want to try that at home, kids.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. So Henry brings Sonny, the guy who made Tommy angry in the previous scene, to meet with Paulie because Sonny is really worried about Tommy and about the violence that he might do to him now that he's kind of got it out for him. And they convince Paulie to go in on the restaurant as a silent partner. And here we get a description of the way that a lot of this kind of mob stuff happens. So essentially, Paulie goes in as a partner in the restaurant, and for that, he offers protection to Sonny. Sonny cannot be harmed by anybody else in the criminal world, and for that protection, he gets protection money, which is totally non-conditional. It has to be paid to him no matter what, no matter what's going on at the restaurant, no matter what's happening in the economy. The protection money gets paid week after week, month after month. And while the protection money is being paid, the mob is essentially able to use the restaurant as a source of embezzled funds and as a front through which to order merchandise and equipment on credit that will never be paid and sell it at discounted prices for essentially a pure windfall. And they just do this until they run the business into the ground, and then they burn it down for the insurance money. Oh, man. And we get the impression, as Henry describes this, that this is pretty normal. Like, this is just something that gets done to businesses around once or twice a year forever, essentially. It's just something the mob does. And I mentioned at the top of the recap in my initial description that this is an extremely accurate film, but in some ways its historical accuracy is not literal, but it's figurative or spiritual. And this is one of those things, right? Like, probably this exact thing did not happen in Henry Hill's life in this restaurant. It's probably an amalgamation of multiple things that happened in his life. But the point is, this happened. Like, this is an extremely accurate depiction of a normal operational thing that happened in the mob many times during his story. And what Scorsese does that's really artful is he's figured out how to distill the essence of this culture ethnographically from 25 or 30 years in this guy's life into a 2.5 hour runtime, and find a way to sum things up in a way that conveys the spirit, like the spiritual truth of what was happening, without being totally textually literal. And that's like, it's pretty incredible, honestly, as a 2.5 hour just explanation of the way this horrifying world worked. It's doesn't seem good. Doesn't seem like a good world to live in.
No, it's just, that's why they have the disclaimer on TNT. Those are the cultural attitudes of the 1990s.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So Tommy convinces Henry to go on a double date with him. He wants to go out with a Jewish lady who's racist against Italians. She won't go out with Italians alone. And the way in which she will go out with Tommy is if she's allowed to bring her friend, but then her friend needs to have a date. And so Tommy wants Henry to be the date for this kind of other pair in this double date they're going to go on.
That's going to be a lot safer for this lady. Instead of one Italian guy, 2 Italian guys.
Yeah. Oh, and her, her friend will surely be able to protect her against these 2 violent monsters, Lorraine Bracco. Yeah. Yep. So they go on the date, and Henry is hooked up with a lady named Karen, Lorraine Bracco, as I just said, and she is turned off by Henry's disinterest and standoffishness, but reluctantly agrees to go on a second date with him because Tommy and the other lady want to do another double date. They agree to meet on Friday, but Henry stands her up, and she makes Tommy take her to find him and essentially verbally assaults him in front of a bunch of his friends outside of the cab stand they all hang out at. And he's really turned on by this. So now he's attracted to Karen now that she's now that she's kind of attacked him.
I respect it.
And so now we get their first solo date, which is the infamous Copa scene. This has got to be one of the most famous scenes in film history, right? So we'll talk about this a little bit. I'll describe what happens in the scene, and then I'll talk about what makes it so interesting and a little bit of trivia about it. Hon, what's going on? You want to say hi to Uncle Mike?
Yes.
Okay, well, you interrupt me in the middle of my description.
Hi, Uncle Mike.
Oh, hi, Nora. What's up, kid? What are you doing?
I'm here.
Yeah, why are you here?
I'm at home.
Where'd you go?
Yeah, where'd you guys go?
We went to Target.
Oh, fun. A lot of good stuff there.
I need you to leave now, okay? I love you. I'm just up here recording the podcast.
Bye.
So the way the scene plays out is Henry and Karen approach the Copa, and there's a long line waiting to get inside. And so they decide to go in through essentially the service entrance, and they cut through all of the kind of back areas of the restaurant and club, through the kitchen, etc. And as they pass through, Henry is glad handing with everybody, giving people money as he passes by, kind of saying things that would reveal to someone who was just kind of dropping in on his life, as Karen is in this moment, that he's really connected. He knows all of these people. He's got a great personality. He's a sophisticate, and it's all just really cool. We kind of see his world and can imagine how she feels about this as she's getting this first vision into it. They come out of the kitchen into the main area of the club, and immediately, someone whom I think we're given to believe is either the club owner or a manager or something like that, recognizes Henry, calls him over, is very welcoming and kind of gracious, and kind of snaps for a waiter to go get a table and chairs and bring them out to the best area out on the show floor, like right in front of the stage, in front of a bunch of people. He skips the entire line. He gets the best seat, and Karen is totally intoxicated by this experience of seeing, to my earlier comment, just how connected, how powerful, how sophisticated Henry is as such a young man. It's a pretty cool scene.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a power move that Henry pulls off, and I'm taking notes, and I want to use it the next time I go on a first date and I take someone to Domino's Pizza. I'm going to go in the back entrance. I'm going to walk right through. I'm going to say, Andy, 2 medium pies, only $6.99 each, right? And he's going to be like, who are you? Put the order in, buddy.
Him $1.
That's right. Just put $1
in his breast pocket.
No, but in all seriousness, I mean, this has got to be like the defining scene of the film, and it's so well done because it's done as one long take.
Yes.
And I think what's so incredible about it and this film in general is that Scorsese does such a great job of simulating the addiction of this mob lifestyle. It's the combination of that long take camera movement following Henry through the club, the voiceover, the needle drops. Like, it's such a dopamine loop, and it really, as the viewing audience, you feel that same intoxication that Karen feels when she's led into this, seeing this sort of lifestyle and the power for the first time. It's really cool stuff.
Yeah, it's incredible. There's another great example of this that I was going to mention at the end, but since you mentioned the way Scorsese does this, and I've kind of separated the film into the 3 segments that I've separated it into, kind of in the same way narratively that you're alluding to right now. It has this kind of general, sort of emotional thrust to it that has 3 separate parts that kind of capture, I think, the 3 parts of this cycle of violence and addiction. And we're in kind of the come up part of the film right now. But there's a little hiccup that happens during the What's Funny About Me scene. That scene happens maybe 21 or 22 minutes into the film, and it's the first time the narrative stops at all. For those first 20 minutes of the film, you're just having a great fucking time for the whole time. There's great songs playing. Henry's talking about how happy he is. The cuts are really quick. Nothing is ever lingered on, and everything is very celebratory. Even when he gets arrested, it's a celebratory moment because everybody's really proud of him for handling it well. And then in that moment where Henry realizes that he may have incited a violent reaction from Tommy, everything kind of stops, and we get longer shots on characters. The entire nature of the narrative shifts in that moment, and it really simulates that feeling of oh, he was riding high for the first 10 years, but now he's finally seeing oh, there might be danger to me in this life as well, physically, and it's I referenced this earlier, that's what Scorsese does so well, and why I think this is such a perfect example of what makes him such a strong storyteller in this medium, is he really understands how to take a relatively short runtime. I mean, this isn't a long movie for how sprawling the story is. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and he conveys so much with so little, and it's really, really cool. The Copa shot is also a great example of it. So you referenced this. This is one continuous Steadicam shot through this, and that's really cool. I mean, it's inspired so much on film and television in the intervening years between 1990 and now. But what else is really cool about it that I don't know if you knew is that they didn't want to do it this way. They were made by the Copa management to go in through the back entrance. They wouldn't let them go in through the front. And so it was like such artfulness on Scorsese's part. He realized like, oh, there has to be a way we could transform this limitation into something that enhances the story. And so this was like something they had to do. They initially just blocked the scene wanting him to go in through the front door,
right,
like a normal guest. It's so cool.
Yeah. Necessity breeds invention. Is that the innovation?
Yes. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah. Well, I've heard it both ways.
Well, I've only heard it the one way because that's the way it's said.
I'm too busy planning out my Domino's Pizza dinner dates.
There you go. And so now we know, right, that Karen is totally in from this scene.
Yes.
She's completely invested. The Air France heist happens. It goes off perfectly. They make $428,000 and kick Paulie's share up to him. And Paulie is really proud of Henry for having managed this huge score. Henry and Karen celebrate the score by visiting some bougie oceanside club. And while they're sitting at the table talking, a guy named Bruce approaches, kind of hits on Karen. And Karen explains to Henry that he's a neighbor of hers. After they get back from the club, Jimmy and Henry go to some wig guy's shop, guy named Maury, who's going to be a kind of major supporting character for the rest of the story. And they're trying to collect protection money from him. I do just kind of want to describe Maury a little bit now because I don't know when I'll get another chance to do, and we are going to see him a lot. He's very fucking annoying. He's this gregarious guy. He's a wig salesman.
I like Maury, but he is annoying.
Introduced him. Oh yeah, I love Maury, but he's a super annoying guy. Like I like him because he's somebody you can kind of imagine knowing. Like I think that I'm kind of an annoying person in this way. Like you just have like a really big personality, like loquacious, big talker. Like
this is like the one question I was going to ask you during this episode. I guess now is as good a time as any. Which characters do you think we would be in Goodfellas? Like, not which ones would we want to be, but like which ones do you think we are most closely aligned with, dispositionally? Would you be Maury?
Yeah, I guess I'd probably be Maury.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. If I'm being honest with myself.
Yeah, Maury's a nice guy.
What about you? Maybe Maury's cool. He's a nice guy. Everybody likes him except for Jimmy. Jimmy fucking hates him. Everybody else really likes Maury. Like he's a beloved guy. Like everybody just kind of is at peace with how annoying he is. Like they're happy to have him around. They just know. Henry describes him in the narration that like frequently he'll talk about Maury doing something that's really pissing Jimmy off, and he'll frequently mention as an aside that like he knows Maury doesn't mean anything by it. That's just what he's like, and everybody seems to appreciate that. Like Maury's not a bad guy. He's just kind of annoying.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't know. I don't say this in a talking myself up kind of way, but I think it might be Jimmy. He's pretty pragmatic when it comes to business and like operational stuff, but he has a violent undercurrent to him. Yeah. Not that I'm like a violent person, but I think dispositionally that's probably like I'm not as outwardly like out of control as Tommy, and
no, certainly not.
And unlike Henry, I don't. Henry's his whole arc is about buying into the allure of the mob lifestyle, and we see the come up and the fall down and all that stuff. I think I'd be most like Jimmy, where it's like I'd get a sick thrill out of the thieving or the occasional bout of ultra violence, but overall I'm just managing my books and my stolen goods. Yeah.
I think that, and we'll talk about this a little bit as we kind of approach the end, but like, I think that Henry is like a fucking loser cuck. Like that's what I struggled with in
he's
this
a soy
film.
boy
It's
beta
just
cuck.
What is this guy's arc? Like he's such a fucking loser. And so, no, I don't think that you're like Henry at all. He's like just things are constantly just happening to him.
Yes.
And he looks around like, oh my gosh, like what is all this violence? And it's like, dude, you've wrought this. Like you knew what this life was when you decided to get into it. And he's constantly like surprised Pikachu face at all the horrible things the violent people he hangs out with are doing. But then he just keeps doing it. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like he's such an annoying character. Like I was really annoyed by him. I watched the film twice for this episode. And the first time I watched it, I was like, man, Henry's a little bit more annoying than I remember him being. And then the second time I watched it last night, I was just cataloging all the times I was like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Like he's an idiot.
You've been watching too much Manosphere content in your Facebook reels. You're like, oh, this guy's a real soy boy beta cuck.
Oh God, why are we talking about this? Oh, Maury, that's right. So yeah, that's Maury's character. So we're first introduced to Maury, seeing him doing a TV ad for his wig shop, and he just has this big, larger than life personality that we see kind of depicted in the commercial. And then we can see Jimmy is kind of standing angrily out in the major portion of the shop, watching the commercial, getting more and more pissed because he can kind of overhear Maury.
That's definitely something that I would do, like just getting more and more agitated watching this shit unfold.
And Maury is in the back talking shit to Henry because Maury and Henry are close friends, talking shit to Henry about Jimmy. And Henry's like just trying to get him to shut the fuck up. It's like, don't you know that Jimmy is a violent psychopath?
Right, you're within
like,
earshot.
You really like, not only are you not going to pay him the money that you owe him, but you're going to talk a lot of shit about him within earshot. Like, probably not a very good idea. So Henry really likes Maury. They're close friends. Their families are going to become close over the course of the movie. Jimmy fucking hates Maury and hates him for the whole film. So while they're there, the phone rings and the phone call is for Henry. We don't hear who's on the other end of the phone, but Henry has an immediate, very kind of agitated reaction to this phone call and leaves really abruptly without finishing the transaction that he and Jimmy are there to do. We see him arrive at his destination, and it's Karen standing in a phone booth, and she's in tears, and she tells Henry that essentially Bruce, the guy from the Oceanside Club a scene or two ago, assaulted her in his car. Henry is really angry. He drives Karen home and kind of very gently, peacefully kind of ushers her into the house.
Yep.
And then he takes out his pistol and walks across the street to where Bruce is hanging out with a couple of his douchebag friends and just fucking beats the fuck out of him. He pistol whips him 8 to 12 times in the head with the pistol and tells him that if he ever touches Karen again, he swears on his mother that he'll kill him. And then he leaves.
I mean, if that doesn't work as a deterrent, nothing will.
Yeah, I mean, what's really interesting about it is it seems like everybody kind of knows who Henry is. And so it's really weird that Bruce was so ignorant that he assaulted
I'm gonna grope this
connected mobster's girlfriend. Really, really stupid behavior. Listen, I think, anybody who assaults a woman should get pistol whipped. I think that would be, probably good for society, honestly, if there's a way you can apply it totally fairly. Like if we had perfect information about everything that happened, it could know for sure that we weren't, punishing someone who hadn't actually committed the crime. I think that would act as a very strong deterrent. But especially this guy is also stupid in addition to being mean and violent, because I think that's especially the person who's a bad combination. You don't want to assault. Really, really bad combination of poor morals and weak discernment, and also just very, very, very bad decision making on Bruce's part. Bruce is a funny name, isn't it?
Bruce Almighty, man.
Yeah, Caroline showed me on YouTube a few nights ago these YouTube shorts. Have you ever seen these? They're these videos that this farmer makes of him trying to cook while his cow Bruce interrupts everything he's doing. Yeah, they're really funny. I'll send you one after
Jesus
this. So
Christ.
we watched,
how
10
long?
of them.
How long are these videos?
Oh, they're short. They're 15 seconds long, 20 seconds long. They're
great.
just these little vignettes. They're a masterpiece of production, because I have to imagine that each one takes hours to film, because the way that he cuts it all together, it looks like it's all just one experience that he's having with this cow in his kitchen, while he's trying to make tacos or whatever. But obviously each half second or second long shot takes, he's got to get the cow out of the house, get that cow into the house. It's not like the cow can be in there while he's staging what the scene's going to be like. It's just, but the cow's name is Bruce is the point. And that's the funniest name.
It's a good name for a cow.
He's just saying oh, Bruce, come on, Bruce. And he's kind of pushing the cow's head away from him. And I don't think it would be funny if the cow's name was something other than Bruce, honestly.
I agree.
After the assault, he brings the gun across the street back to Karen. We can see that she was kind of surreptitiously watching him out the window, and he hands her the gun and tells her to hide it, and she does. And I think we get our first Karen narration at this point, right? And she narrates that a lot of normal girls would probably have left when this kind of thing happened, but she has to admit the truth, which is that it turned her on.
She likes bad boys.
Yeah, man.
I have to say,
bad boys too. Yeah.
Oh my God, that'd be a great recommendation. I did not know that the film was going to change narrators partway through. And I thought that was a really cool switch up, that we were getting both perspectives. Yep. I thought that was really neat. And I actually, normally in films, I don't care for narration. I think it's usually pretty lazy for a film to rely on narration, but obviously this is an exception to that rule. It's very masterfully done. It's done a lot. And I really like how we're switching between two different perspectives, as Henry rises up and eventually falls from grace within this gang lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that, right, as a stylistic choice, I think it's really elevated by how strong both the performances are. Leota and Bracco are both exceptional actors, and they both have really good voices. Lorraine Bracco in particular has a really enjoyable voice to listen to. Like, she's got a vocal fry. It's very husky. And it's kind of fun listening to her like tell the story. I think it really enhances what could otherwise be a little bit of a trying kind of stylistic choice.
Yeah, and I think over the course of this nearly 2.5 hour long film, which is not overly long, but I think it could feel overly long if we only heard Ray Liotta narration.
Yep, I agree. It is cool. So Henry and Karen get married in the next scene. She has a lot of fun at the wedding. We can see that she's now totally intoxicated by the life. She's in, and the wedding ends. And this is, for me, the end of the first portion of the film.
Gotcha.
So I think the general thrust of the narration changes quite a bit after they get married. So that first segment was kind of like the come up. Right, I guess I would say, and now I think the second segment of the film is like kind of like the come down. Guess like
it's a problem for me because, as we've discussed many times in the podcast, that first part, the come up, is always my favorite part of any of these rise and fall sort of stories. I should have stopped watching right there. Just having a ton of fun with my mob friends.
Yeah, yep. So now Henry's kind of at the peak of his power in this portion of the
power
narrative.
Levels over 9,000.
Right. Well, things are going to start to fall apart pretty fast, though. So they've gotten married, and Henry and Karen are living at Karen's parents now. And her mom, especially, but both of her parents, we understand, are really pissed that Henry is a fucking weirdo. He's not behaving like a normal husband should be. He's staying out all night, etc. Karen goes to her first event with the other mob wives, and we can tell based on her behavior as well as her narration that she feels really alienated by what the other mob wives are like. When she gets home, she expresses her concerns to Henry about what the mob life has done to these other women, and he's really dismissive of her concerns. We get some narration from her. After a while, it got to all be normal. None of it seemed like crimes. We can see she's being totally brainwashed by the life. Henry and Tommy hijack a truck, and we see detectives serve a search warrant to Karen and search the house, and she narrates that this kind of thing happens all the time. The cops are always coming around with warrants and subpoenas, and her sense is they're essentially just always looking for a handout to kind of let them continue on their behavior. But as I mentioned before, we're starting to see cracks in their marriage now. Like all is not well in paradise now that they're getting into some kind of domestic normalcy. Oh, and they had kids at this point. In the scene where the cops come with the search warrant, we see that she's holding a baby. So now they have at least one child. We get another time jump, this time to June 11th, 1970. The gang, Jimmy, Tommy, and Henry, are at a bar, and there's another mobster there who's just gotten out of prison, a made guy named Billy Batts. So let's talk about, I guess, the concept of being made now to make sure people understand. So there's kind of two tiers of operator in the Italian mafia, right? There's just like regular guys, but then officers, anybody with a senior rank, and even some men who are just down the street are essentially made. And once you're made, you're untouchable. The boss of the family in which you're made has to sign off on anything being done to you, and you're gonna have a pretty good reason to want to hurt somebody who's a made guy. If you kill a made guy, you're gonna get killed. That's that's the recompense. And only full-blooded Sicilians can be made men. So we know. From Henry's early narration, and I think we're meant to kind of infer from his last name, Conway, that Henry and Jimmy are Irish, and so they cannot be made men.
Yeah, they're both
they're
half
just
Irish.
Not eligible to. Yeah, they're not eligible to kind of occupy that role in the hierarchy. And so this guy Billy Batts, who just got out of prison, he's a made guy. He sees Tommy across the bar and knew him when he was a kid before he went away to prison, and just starts kind of gently ribbing him for having used to be somebody who shined his shoes with his shine box. And he just really horribly misreads the situation. Just keeps telling Tommy to go get his fucking shine box, essentially. And Tommy is really pissed, and he leaves the bar and tells Henry and Jimmy to make sure they keep Billy there for the rest of the night, because he's going to come back. And so we get a cut ahead a few hours later. And as things are winding down, all of Billy's guys have left, and he's just hanging out at the bar with just Jimmy. The two of them are talking, and Henry is also there, kind of off to the side. And Tommy comes in, and he fucking murders him, essentially. While Atlantis by Donovan plays.
That's
great tune.
Yeah, I did not catch basically any of these needle drops. So God bless you for only listening to music that came out, more than 50 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this movie is a big part of why I listen to that kind of music, honestly. I mean, I saw this film at such an artistically formative point in my kind of life as I was kind of crystallizing what my kind of taste was going to be. And I think a lot of the music that I like is because of Goodfellas, actually.
I thought you just listened to shit that your parents listened to because you're artistically unadventurous.
No, my parents don't listen to this kind of music.
Oh, yeah?
No, my parents listen to like classic rock from the 70s and 80s.
Ah.
This is like, soul standards and doo-wop. And, I guess Donovan is probably British Invasion, I think, like my kind of mid-era British Invasion from the mid-60s. But I guess my parents listened to a little bit of British Invasion. But that's kind of on the periphery, I guess. They're more 70s and 80s kind of people. Jimmy and Henry help Tommy clean up the body, and you can kind of tell that Henry is more upset about this than the other guys are. And we get a great little character beat here, where as they're cleaning up the body, and Henry owns this bar, or he's like a silent partner in this bar or whatever, we see that Tommy is kind of almost in tears about this. And I think we're supposed to understand that he's probably panicking a little bit about what he's just done.
He did a bad thing.
The way that he justifies it to Henry is that he really didn't want to get blood on the floor of his restaurant. I love that character moment for Tommy as a character. Like, say this guy is such a fucking repressed weirdo who has like twisted all of his emotions into so many knots to be able to do the things he does and act the way he does. And it's like, this is, I'll draw attention to a couple more of these kind of subtle character beats over the rest of the film. But we do occasionally get these little character moments where we see like, oh, these people are so broken. And that's something else that I think is so artful about the way Scorsese tells the story. And I think part of the reason why, folks like Roger Ebert think this is better than something like The Godfather. The Godfather is very operatic in structure. It's got a very classical kind of texture to it. The characters explain their motivations a lot. If you really want to understand Tommy as a character, if you really want to understand Jimmy as a character, you have to just look for these really subtle indications that Pesci and De Niro do in their performances. And it's like, it's there for you if you want to see it, or it's not. You can just have a good time watching it. And like that is, I think what makes Scorsese so uniquely talented as a filmmaker is how he's able to convey the kind of depth that somebody like Coppola is in something like The Godfather, but his means are so much more subtle and artful. And of course, this film is really kind of him at the peak of his powers. So pretty cool stuff. So they leave with the body, and they don't have a shovel to bury it. And so they stop at Tommy's mother's house. I don't know if you know this, Mike, but Tommy's mother is played by Martin Scorsese's mother.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yep. So that's Marty's mom who plays her. And this entire scene is improvised except for the painting. So all of this was just done off the cuff. His mom's in a lot of his movies, usually in much smaller roles than this. But I think in like maybe the late 70s or the early 80s, he started casting her in all of his movies just because she kind of liked doing it. And so, yeah, he just turned her loose in this scene. Like he told her to just like act like an old Italian mother and like do whatever she would do. And so everything she says is improvised, and she's essentially leading the scene of what all the other actors are doing. The one thing he wanted her to do is the painting. So she has them all sit down. They've come around to the house maybe at like 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, not expecting her to be awake. And so Jimmy kind of ushers her off. He's like, no, go back to bed. We're just stopping to grab something. We're going to leave. And she's like, no, I want to see you guys. Like, I want to see Tommy. I haven't seen him in so long. And so she sits them down and starts feeding them dinner. And they're all eating together, just having this really weird conversation. And she pulls out this painting and tells Tommy that she wants to show her painting to the guys. And so here's the painting. It's this is probably pastels, right? On a canvas. And she's got two dogs sitting in a canoe, one looking one way, one looking the other way. And then there's a man kind of sitting behind the dogs in the frame. This painting was actually painted by Nicholas Pileggi's mother, co-writer of the script with Marty. And it's based on a famous National Geographic photo from around this time. And the guys all laugh because the man in the painting looks just like Billy Batts, just with a beard.
So
they all kind of laugh to each other about that. But you can tell that Henry is really disturbed by the fact that they're all laughing about this. Like, and this is what I really struggled with Henry about. Like, I feel like this scene encapsulates so much of my confusion about what this character is supposed to be, is that especially in this scene, we see these things that tell us as viewers, like, oh, this guy's really not comfortable with this world. Like, he's seeing there's this dark underbelly that he's really not comfortable with, but he never does anything about it. Like, he really doesn't like the violence and is really unnerved by what Tommy and Jimmy are like about this brazen murder. But he's just like, he just goes along with it. He's like, whatever. You know, like, I don't know what we're supposed to think about this guy, honestly. I guess it's just what he was really like. It really happened. So,
yeah, he classic like protagonist that just has things happen to him.
Yep. So they leave, they get a shovel, and they get a kitchen knife from Tommy's mom, and we get back to the opening scene. So now we're kind of back to the beginning of the narrative where it started in media res, and we see that entire opening scene again, a little bit truncated in a slightly different configuration. And Henry explains the concept of made man and how you can't kill a made man in narration. That sequence is now over. Henry has a girlfriend now, a lady named Janice, and we see them all out at the Copa, all the mob guys with their girlfriends. This is another scene where I really love, where we just get this little, this touch of how insane all these people are. They're all totally enraptured by the music. Like, this is the only context in which they can allow themselves to actually feel emotion is through this kind of art and fiction, because they've just twisted themselves in so many knots emotionally and cognitively to be able to do these things. I love that. How respectful and disciplined and enraptured they all are sitting at this concert when we know what they're like outside of this context. I feel like in 1 5-second shot tells you so much about these characters that a less artful storyteller might have to explain through exposition or dialogue or narration or something like that. It's really, really cool.
They draw the line at being disrespectful audience members.
Right, exactly. What the fuck is wrong with these people? But it is, to your earlier comments, more reflective of, I think, the cultural mores of the 90s, really, in the current era. So we've really come far over the past 35 years.
You couldn't make this movie today.
Sunday dinner at Paulie's house. Paulie asks Henry if he knows what happened to Billy Batts, and Henry lies to him, and it is unclear to us as viewers whether Paulie believes him. I watched this scene a couple times. I was trying to figure it out. I think it's meant to be ambiguous. I think that both we and Henry are supposed to wonder, does Paulie believe him that he actually doesn't know anything about this?
Yeah, I couldn't tell either. I think it is deliberately ambiguous, and Paulie is so conservative as a leader that you have to wonder what's going through his head with this situation.
Yep. And Paul Sorvino acts this role so well. He has such a great face.
Yes.
He's kind of implacable, but occasionally he will show a little bit of emotion, and it's so subtle.
Yeah.
The character speaks so little. He makes so few faces, but he's this big guy, very gregarious, kind of imposing presence. And it's really, really cool. It's a great performance. We get a little bit of a time jump. It's unclear how all these parts fit together. So it's something less than 6 months of a time jump, essentially. And they're out drinking together, and Jimmy pulls Henry aside and says they have to dig up and move Billy Batts' body because some developers are planning to build a condo development on the land where they buried the body. Oops. And they go to dig up the body. And once again, Henry is the only one who's disgusted by any of this. He has such a more visceral reaction to the smell of the body, to the experience that they're having. He's the only one who's upset about it at all. And now we come to the spider scene, the infamous spider scene.
Yeah.
This is one of the other iconic Goodfellas scenes, I think. A little bit to say about this one before I start talking about it. Joe Pesci had a lot of trouble acting this scene. He really felt like this was a moral low point for the character. And due to Pesci's method acting style, he really struggled to do this one. He has talked in interviews about how this one was particularly difficult for him and really wrecked him, having to put himself into Tommy's mind at this kind of low moral point for him in his arc, which I think is really cool. It's an incredible Joe Pesci performance. We talked about this during Raging Bull, but it's just what an incredible blessing that this guy who was going to quit acting got, kind of picked back up by De Niro and Scorsese and brought into what clearly was his calling in life, because he's fucking incredible. What an amazing actor. He's so good.
Do you think that he made the right choice, leaving waiting tables behind?
Back to acting?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. He won an Oscar.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's kind of the peak of that craft, and he managed to reach it in only 10 years after coming back.
As a bystander, as a movie podcaster, I think method acting is pretty fucking stupid on the face of it, but I can't knock the results. Joe
I don't think you
Pesci,
can.
Robert De Niro, they're making moves.
Yeah, I don't think method acting is stupid. Do you think method acting is stupid?
Yeah,
God, you really do, don't you? Because
Yeah.
your style is like the opposite of that.
What does
I'm
that
just like,
mean?
I'm putting it all together. Well, you're a preparer. You prepare for things. I am much more of a method like kind of person in terms of the way we do this podcast.
How so?
Like it's just all jazz and improvisation for me. I'm just inhabiting this conversation that we're having, but you do so much preparing and blocking and outlining and stuff for the podcast.
Yeah, I wish in another world, in another universe, I kind of wish I had gone to film school. I don't know if it'd be very good for my long-term career prospects or being able to retire, but I think that I could, with the education and some funding, I think I could be a decent film director because so much of that is operations
Right.
and
Yep.
like managing moving parts. I think I could be better at that than I could be at acting. I think that, I don't know, when it comes to method acting, there was an interesting interview with Kristen Stewart, I think, recently.
Is she a method actor? Does she do method?
No, she was discounting method acting, saying that essentially that, I think her point was just that performance is inherently vulnerable and therefore embarrassing and unmasculine, and so men essentially develop the method to try and retain some semblance of masculinity in their performance because it's an inherently submissive act. Like you're submitting to, what the director wants essentially. I think it's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's people can create good performances without doing the method. So I don't know. For every Robert De Niro in Raging Bull, you get like a Jared Leto in Suicide Squad. So it's like, sometimes I can take it seriously,
I think it's just
sometimes
a matter
not so much.
of how good you are, right? So a couple of rebuttals to that. And we should define what method acting is, right, for this discussion. So there's kind of, in a categorization macro sense, there's essentially two ways to act, right? There's learning and practicing and rehearsing your lines. That's like regular non-method acting. And then the method, which is the way De Niro acts, is trying to identify experiences that you've had that have had emotional salience for you, that have a correlation to the emotional experience that the character whom you're playing is supposed to be having in the scene, and then recalling those memories and making yourself feel those feelings again so that you can actually have the emotional response on stage rather than pretending at it. And the way that the method kind of came to the fore was, I think, in large part, a part of the shift from stage acting to film acting. When you act on stage, the kind of acting that I think gets rewarded by audiences is the kind of big gregarious acting that you need to be doing to be perceived by folks in the back of the house, exactly, or in the back of the seating area rather. And once we switched to film and then eventually television as the dominant mode of seeing performances, there was a lot more opportunity for cameras to be trained on actors in a way that might make those kinds of bigger, more practiced performances seem a little bit silly by comparison. And I just don't think that I agree that method acting is a less submissive form of acting than non-method acting, to be honest. It's like, what could be more vulnerable and submissive than actually living your emotions on screen for millions of people? Like, I just don't think that I agree with Kristen Stewart's general argument here. And also, for what it's worth, while the kind of initial developer of the method was this gentleman, Konstantin Stanislavski, Soviet actor from the mid-20th century, it was really popularized and evangelized by a woman, Stella Adler, who was Robert De Niro's big teacher early in his career. I read a lot about this in his biography. And so I think there's also a sort of gender politics slant to her argument that's a little bit silly, given that maybe the second most important person in its formation was a woman.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think I get what you're saying, that your view is that method acting is not actually any less vulnerable. I think her argument is that those who engage in the method perceive it as less vulnerable because they're essentially they're putting up that intermediate layer where they're You know, if I'm playing Godzilla in a film, you know, I'm on set and I'm saying you can only call me Godzilla. You know, I'm always going to be Godzilla, and therefore there's like this layer of obfuscation between you and.
All right, I can see that.
I mean, listen, this is actually we're not getting emails the way we used to, but I would love to hear from the citizens of De Niro Nation. Our hero De Niro at gmail.com. Let us know what you think about method acting. You know, great opportunity for our more writerly listeners, or those who claim they're writers, to chime in. Our hero De Niro at gmail.com.
There you go. We do have some of those listeners. So in any case, that was a long aside. Great discussion, though. Back to the Spider scene. So Spider is played by Michael Imperioli, famous now for playing Christopher Moltisanti on The Sopranos. Got to be one of the greatest TV performances of all time, right?
Yeah. One of the great characters.
Right. Obviously, The Sopranos is stacked with incredible characters and incredible performances, but Michael Imperioli really stands out, and he's done some great stuff in the intervening period, too. He was really, really good in kind of a major supporting role in White Lotus Season 2. It was nice to see him playing a very different character than the mobsters that I think we've generally seen him play. And he's just an incredible actor. And it's great to see him in this film, especially much earlier in his career. I believe there are 28 actors in the Goodfellas who were also in The Sopranos, if I'm remembering the number correctly.
It's a shame you've already blown, recommending the pilot episode of The Sopranos, because it really fit in here for one of your classic non-film recommendations during our film recommendation segment.
I have a film recommendation for this episode.
I'm proud of you.
It's a really good one. So, yeah. God, we're really losing the plot here.
Yeah, get back into it.
So Spider's here. They're all there drinking at the bar, and Spider is the bartender at this bar that they're drinking at. And he's kind of like a little bit of a submissive, kind of stuttery guy. And Tommy calls him over and asks him to bring him a drink. And when he comes over, he's brought a drink for somebody else and not what Tommy asked him for. They get into an argument about this, and Tommy gets really pissed and essentially shoots at his feet, trying to make a joke about making him dance.
Yeah,
like in some Western movie. I can't remember what movie it is. Yeah, yep. But inadvertently actually shoots him in the foot. And Tommy asks actually nasty about it. He essentially is just like, the guy's being a wimp, like making a big deal out of me shooting him. It was an accident. Like, who does he think? Acting like that, essentially. We get a little aside. The next day, Henry gets into a huge fight with Karen as he is leaving the house to go out with his friends again. And she screams at him and kicks him out of the house, says she knows he's having an affair. We know that he is, too, with Janice, whom we talked about earlier. And they have a nasty screaming match as he's leaving. And their older daughter overhears it as Henry is leaving the house. Where he's going is back to the bar that Spider works at. And so Spider is there working. The guys are all there drinking again the next day. And Spider has a huge cast on his foot. And Tommy makes fun of him for it. And Spider very unwisely tells Tommy to go fuck himself. Although with a normal person, I think it would be, if anything, a disproportionately mild response to getting shot in the foot, essentially as a joke. And Jimmy eggs Tommy on. He's like, "Oh, you going to take this from him? Like, oh, I can't believe you would do this." And so Tommy shoots Spider like 46 times and kills him. And Jimmy is really, really pissed. He's like, "Oh, I was just joking. Like, how could you take this seriously? What the fuck is wrong with you?" But this is another one of those great character moments that you can miss if you aren't paying very close attention, where I think an unobservant, maybe undiscerning viewer could think this is some example of morality on Jimmy's part. But it's really clear to an astute viewer that he's really just upset about the morass operationally that this has created for them. And he remarks to Tommy at the end of the scene that now he doesn't have a lime in his drink, now that the bartender's dead. It's a great like throwaway Jimmy line. Like, now I ain't got no fucking lime. Now that all this has happened. So Henry is now living at Janice's apartment now that he's left the house. And Jimmy and Polly go to visit him there and tell him he has to get back with Karen as she's making a big stink about them being separated. She's been over to Polly's house a few times. She's spending a lot of time over at Jimmy's house complaining to his wife about it. And it's just not going to work. They don't trust Karen. He's obviously not going to get a divorce from her. Polly mentions in this scene that he knows that Karen won't divorce Henry. She'll sooner kill him. And so he has to get back with her. He doesn't have to go back to her right now, but he has to go back. And as one more kind of last hurrah, he's going to send him to Florida to collect some money that he's owed with Jimmy. Jimmy and Henry go down to Florida to collect this money. Initially, the guy from whom they're collecting is resistant to their threats, but they eventually extricate the money from him by holding him over a lion's pit in the Tampa Zoo, and he acquiesces and agrees to pay them the money. They go back home, but when they get back home, they get arrested because apparently the gentleman whom they collected the money from had a sister who worked in some kind of clerical role for the FBI, and she turned them all in, including their brother. And Jimmy and Henry are both sentenced to 10 years in prison, separate prisons, unfortunately. As part of this, it's mentioned as an aside and depicted in the subsequent scene, Paulie also gets sentenced to prison, but only for a year and just for contempt. So he didn't actually get tied up in all this, but he did something contemptuous that got him sentenced to some prison time as part of this whole debacle. So the guys are in prison now, and it's totally awesome. They're not in Gen Pop. They kind of seem like they live off maybe in their own kind of building, separate from the prison. They're in prison, but they're just living relatively normally. They're cooking all kinds of delicious food and drinking a lot of wine and just all hanging out with each other. Henry's there, Paulie's there living with him, and a couple of other guys who we only see in this scene who seem like they're maybe in prison for life, essentially.
Okay.
When he's going off to prison in that final scene, Tommy says something to him like, say hello to those fucking like something or others. And those are the guys he's talking about, like just guys who are in prison forever, essentially, who they're living with in there. And I remark here that, Paulie has this method for cutting garlic that I totally forgot about that I kind of want to try, where he cuts it with a razor blade to slice it like super thin so it'll melt in the pan and caramelize. I use a food processor when I'm cooking with garlic to make it really small like that so it'll melt in the pan that way. But it seemed like it would be kind of fun to slice it with a razor blade. I think I'm going to give that a try next time I'm cooking with garlic.
I love garlic. Real garlic head.
Oh, yeah. You're a real garlic head. Karen is smuggling drugs in for Henry to sell in prison. One time when she comes in, she sees the visitor log that Janice has visited him recently, and she gets really pissed, makes a big stink about it and about how she's struggling financially with him being in prison, and finally makes him promise not to see Janice anymore. We get another time jump to 4 years later. Henry is released from prison. Karen picks him up, and she's totally changed. We can see now that she's much more involved with the operations of his kind of criminal life. She's helping him deal the drugs, etc. And she's just a totally different person now. After this time jump, he goes home. His daughters are older now. They're very happy to see him, but he's disgusted by the paucity of the house that Karen's been living in and says they're going to move immediately. And he has to go right to Pittsburgh the next day to do a drug deal. After he gets back, before he goes to Pittsburgh, he goes to dinner at Paulie's with his daughters and Karen. And Paulie tells him that he knows that he was involved with selling drugs while he was in prison, but now he has to stop doing that now that he's out. And Henry lies to him and tells him he's going to stop dealing drugs. And Paulie warns him and tells him that he's got to watch out for Tommy and Jimmy because they are loose cannons who cannot be trusted, which fair.
Yeah, Paulie's right on all accounts.
Right. It seems like Paulie really cares about Henry, and all he had to do was listen to him and be loyal to him, and everything would have been fine. Face. Right. It's Paulie, as far as a mobster goes, he seems like a pretty noble, honorable guy. Kind of within that world. Seems like that's the kind of person you would want to align yourself with, not these two violent nut jobs who are his two best friends. But what do I know? We see Henry getting super into dealing coke. He's got a new girlfriend named Sandy. He's using her apartment to cut and mix the product. They're cutting it with some kind of talcum powder or flour or something to essentially increase their profits. He pulls Jimmy and Tommy into the operations. And we see Karen have Maury and his wife over to their new house, and their new house is super ostentatious. It has a wall that opens to reveal a dry bar around a stereo system and a small TV, and this is the fucking dream of the mid 70s. Can you imagine having this house in 1975?
It's so ostentatious. I'm glad we're calling it out. I was struck by how gaudy it looked. It really
it's the style, mid-century modern.
Oh man, that house is not mid-century modern, man. That is not it looks like a fucking Chinese restaurant.
Are.
It's we need to go back through the fucking archives and find pictures of this house. It was the most ridiculous looking thing I'd ever seen, and I thought it was so funny. I think it's a very common occurrence where if you give someone more ability to control the design of something, they often make really piss poor choices. A lot of people have a very poor sense of design and taste. I think the example that came to mind for me when I was watching the film is not interior decorating, but the eternal debate between iPhone and Android, iOS versus Android OS. Back in the day, I mean, it's been 14 years since I've had an Android phone, but back in the day, I used to check out r/Android themes on Reddit occasionally. Man, you ever check out like iOS themes or Android themes and look at the people who go out of their way to like customizing their icon packs and all that stuff, their widgets, all that stuff. They make the ugliest looking shit you've ever seen. Like, I understand the impulse to want to personalize your devices, but they always say like, oh, this is my minimal interface. And what they do is they get icons that are indecipherable from one another. You can only tell what they are based on muscle memory. And I swear to God, they always have multiple clocks. And for some reason, they think that's minimalism. They're like, well, you have the clock in the top bar, and there's like a
digital clock,
giant digital clock. And there's always like 3 clocks on the home screen for some reason. And I'm like, oh, you're stupid. You should not be allowed to customize a phone. People should just have iPhones where the icons are in a grid and just leave it at that. But I digress. Please continue with this this recap of Goodfellas.
I completely agree. So you can see now they're friends with Maury and his wife, and Maury talks to Henry about this big heist he wants to do. It's called the Lufthansa heist, and we get Henry narration saying that this was going to be the biggest heist in American history. There's a whole crew who's going to do the heist, and we meet a bunch of them, and we find that he's got their old babysitter, a lady named Lois, helping with his Pittsburgh pickups. She is bringing babies with her to smuggle these drugs, essentially to
they're accomplices. They're going to get 25 to life.
Yeah, these babies are accomplices, essentially to like trick the authorities into not looking at her. It's like, who would suspect this, like nice looking innocent young woman traveling with a baby to be smuggling, 20 pounds of cocaine or whatever. Yeah. Pretty good idea, honestly. And we get a little throwaway scene here where we see Sandy, the person whose house Henry is cutting the coke at, being really indelicate with cleanliness around her home, and that will come back to bite her and Henry in the ass later. He tells her that he bought her a dishwasher so she can keep the shit they're using to cut the coke clean, and she says that she doesn't want to do that because the dishwasher fucks with her nails, and there's just like shit around her apartment that's just coated in like slightly hardened cocaine powder. It doesn't seem like a very good idea. The heist happens. The Lufthansa heist goes off without a hitch. Jimmy has a huge party, and people keep coming in who've used the proceeds from the heist to immediately buy expensive things against Jimmy's express instruction to not do anything that would draw the attention of the authorities.
That's another very Mike back at you moment. Like I could really keep that shit under wraps. I'd be like, no, we're only driving 5 years old at the newest cars. We're only, we're buying mid-level clothes at best. And I understand why he got so pissed off at all these dumb idiots walking in their mink coats and such.
Yeah, it's fucking moronic. It's also like, listen, I like nice things.
Yeah, sure.
If I stole millions of dollars, I would ball out of fucking control. But I think all that Jimmy's saying that they need to do is just like wait 6 months.
Yeah.
It's just like pretend you don't have the money yet. Like give it some time. Like let the authorities like do whatever they're going to do and like figure the case is dead or whatever and stop looking at us, and then go spend your like $100,000 on cars and clothes or whatever. Because I would, if I made a $1 million payday, I would spend $100,000 on fucking bullshit that I would never buy in my life if I didn't have that kind of payday. But I would have the discipline to wait 6 months. I'd be like, I don't want to draw any attention to myself here. Like that's moronic. It's like, these people are idiots, but we've talked about this before, right? In several episodes recently. It's like the selection factors at play. The kind of people who would be in this life are people of weak moral character, right?
Yes.
Like Jimmy is really unusual. Like Paulie is really unusual in how disciplined and how much self-control these guys have. And that's why they're able to rise to the top. Because in this world that's mostly filled with impulsive, violent morons, if you are like violent, but you aren't impulsive and you aren't a moron, you can kind of use that
room to grow in the organization
to climb
upward
to the top.
mobility.
Like, we can see our first kind of clue in this scene that maybe Jimmy's going a little bit nuts from the from the scale of the heist. You can see like you get these little flashes of him like looking very anxious. He's acting emotional in a way that we've never seen him. He's getting very angry with the people about having bought this stuff, and we've never really seen him react in this way about anything. So he's losing his marbles a little bit. De Niro acts this super, super well.
Yes.
It's really good. Maury's there, and he's being super fucking annoying, as usual. He, to remind you of something I said in the recap a minute or two ago, he was the one who masterminded the heist. It was his idea, and he sold Jimmy on it, and Jimmy wasn't willing to give him an advance before the heist, which he was asking for, and now he's still not willing to pay him his share immediately after the heist, and so Maury is getting really, really pissed about this. Jimmy calls Henry into the back and gives him an advance on his payout, tells him not to buy anything expensive, but we can see that he's really not paying attention to anything Jimmy is saying, and we get a smash cut to him coming home with this really gaudy-looking Christmas tree and telling Karen that he bought the most expensive Christmas tree he could find. He hands her like gold bars and like a big stack of cash to go out and shop with. So even he's not listening to Jimmy's instructions to not spend any money.
He's out of control.
He is completely out of control. We get narration from Henry here that this should have been their ultimate score, the windfall of a lifetime, $6 million, and should have been more than enough to go around. But clearly it wasn't, because now we see the aftermath. And essentially what happens here in this subsequent scene is we get a series of montages of Jimmy killing essentially everybody who was involved in the heist. For two reasons we're given to understand from narration. One is that he's really suspicious. He doesn't trust anybody. The first person we see him kill by way of Tommy is Stax, who is this black dude who was the driver for the getaway. The reason why he kills Stax, this is like the only person who he actually has a good reason to kill, is because Stax was supposed to take the box truck that they did the heist in and go get it crushed by some compactor at the dump so that it wouldn't be traceable. But what he did after doing the job was he got high and went over to his girlfriend's house, and the cops found the truck immediately. And so Jimmy knows that eventually the cops are going to catch up to Stax, and so he is actually a loose end. Like, killing him makes sense operationally. But we see him kill everybody else, and Henry explains that part of this was conspiratorial, like anxious thinking on Jimmy's part, and part of it was just pure greed. He really didn't want to pay anybody out for doing the job, and so he just decides to kill everybody who were his co-conspirators rather than doing that. But like, that's like, we're seeing he's losing it. Like, that's not something that the Jimmy from 10 years ago in the narrative would have done. It's just not very good behavior operationally to decide to kill 5 people instead of just shelling out $2 million of the $6 million windfall that you just had to pay folks for their role in it. We get an incredible Robert De Niro scene here. This is also a very gifable moment. You and me have sent this gif to each other, I think, many times. Jimmy is sitting at the bar, and Jethro Tull is playing in the background, and he's smoking a cigarette, but we just see him kind of like looking around at everybody in the bar, and his like face is getting kind of twisted and contorted. You can see he's just like thinking about all the things he's worried about these people doing and like how he's going to kill them all. And it's just like, it's really good. Like, it's only for like 30 seconds, but it's such a fun Robert De Niro moment in this great performance. I love it. He's walking with Henry and starts asking questions about Maury. And Henry narrates that this is when he realizes that Jimmy's going to kill Maury, because this is how it starts. He's just acting kind of suspicious about Maury. Jimmy asks Henry to bring Maury to the bar that night, and Henry plans to try to talk Jimmy out of doing the hit, but he's trying to do it in a way that's subtle, so Jimmy doesn't realize that he isn't on board with him killing him. Jimmy tells Henry that he's decided not to kill him, and Henry is relieved and leaves. But Jimmy takes Tommy and another guy out, and they kill Maury. So Jimmy did realize that Henry wasn't on board with the hit and just decided to exclude him from it rather than not go through with it.
I mean, Maury cannot get out of his own way. He won't shut the fuck up. It's really incredible.
I know, it's really stupid. Like,
no one really can ask for murder, but he's asking for it, really. When it comes to these guys.
Yep. We see Maury's wife come to Henry's house after the killing, and she's really upset that Maury didn't come home. They've been married for 27 years, and he's never not come home at night without calling, so she knows something's going on. Henry is really upset that Jimmy killed Maury. He confronts him about it. He asks him what he's supposed to tell Maury's wife about it, and Jimmy doesn't even understand why Henry is upset. So once again, we're seeing this kind of like disparate reaction to these kinds of things happening between these characters, but once again, Henry doesn't get it. Like, he never leaves the life. He's never like, oh, I don't think this is for me because I'm the only one who's upset that they killed my friend. Like, very strange. So now we see kind of everybody from the heist get killed. We get our final montage of all these killings. So the only people who are involved who are still alive now are Jimmy, Tommy, and Henry, kind of our core crew of characters. And we get some narration from Henry about how Jimmy never paid anybody out, including him, although he knows he must have kicked up to Polly. But Henry's certainly not going to confront him about it because he knows he killed everybody else very wisely. So he's just accepting that he's not going to be paid for the Lufthansa heist and his involvement with it. And Jimmy is really, really happy about everything that's going on. But the thing he's happiest about is that they've just found out that Tommy is going to be made. He's the only one of their little trio who's pure blood Sicilian. And I think we're supposed to understand that Jimmy thinks himself as kind of like a father to Tommy and Henry. So he's really proud that this is happening. We see Tommy go to his ceremony to be made, but it's just a ploy, and they kill him. And we get a great Joe Pesci moment here when he walks into the room where he thinks the ceremony is going to be, and there's nobody there. And he realizes right before he gets shot what he's there, and he goes, "Oh, fuck!" And just as he's in the middle of saying the word "fuck," he gets killed. It's really, really good. And we get probably the best subtle moment of characterization for these folks here in this moment. This is the only time we really see Jimmy show any emotion in the film. And when he's told that Tommy's been killed, he initially gets really, really angry and like kicks over a phone booth. Yeah. But then he starts to cry. He gets really tearful. And there's this incredible moment. I don't know if you noticed it, but Henry is also really upset, and he kind of reaches out to like touch Jimmy's shoulder just as he starts to cry, and Jimmy like immediately turns away from him. It's like even in this moment, like the saddest thing that happens to either of them during the entire story, they can't like show any closeness or any real emotion to each other. Even for Jimmy, who feels like his son was just killed, like he has to mask his sadness through anger. And the way that De Niro acts in this scene, like kind of vacillating between the rage and the despondent crying is amazing. It's really, really special. Very cool. And this is the end of the second segment for me. So we're kind of coming into the final part of the film.
Can't believe we still have more to go.
Well, it's much shorter. This final part, I think it's only about 30 minutes of it. So now we cut ahead, right? This is the third act. I'm calling this the hangover. So we've had the come up, we've had the high, Christ. and now this is the hangover. It's my favorite movie, starring Zach Galifianakis. So we get another time jump. This is to Sunday, May 11th, 1980. Henry packs up some drugs and heads out to his car, and he's very manic. We can tell immediately that he's not in his right mind while this is happening. He seems like he's probably high. As he's driving, he sees a helicopter flying overhead, and all morning as he's driving around running his errands, he keeps seeing the helicopter. We can tell his viewers that it's following him. He drops off some guns for Jimmy. He got these guns for him because Jimmy had some silencers for which he didn't have any matching guns. And while he gives him the guns, we get narration from Henry that he can tell that Jimmy's going to be petty and not buy the guns for him, and he's upset about this. But at the same time, we can see that he's trying to fit the silencers to the guns, but they don't fit. So why would he buy them? And so we can tell here in this moment that Henry's gone a little bit nuts. Like he's very conspiratorial. He's like not seeing things the right way. He goes to the hospital to pick up his brother, and his brother's doctor insists on giving him a checkup because he seems so manic. And he gives him, I can't remember what drug it was, but some benzo or like something to bring him down or something. And he leaves, and the helicopter is still following him. He and Karen go to pick up some drugs. The helicopter is still following him. And in this scene, we're just seeing kind of the minutia of Henry's life, kind of on this, like, what we'll understand in the narrative as it winds down is like the most important day of his life. What's important to know about this sequence, more than the details, is just how long it is and how it's all kind of one stream of consciousness. Like we're jumping between these little scenes that are like 5 seconds long, essentially for like 20 minutes, just like jump, 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 all of the stuff that Henry is doing this day that kind of conveys like his coke-addled fugue state that he's in essentially while he's going through the motions of his life. He needs to give the drugs that he and Karen picked up to Lois, the babysitter who's smuggling drugs with babies for them. And she tells Henry that she has to go home to get her lucky flying hat. She won't fly without her lucky flying hat. And as they leave, as he grudgingly agrees to take her to her house to get her lucky flying hat, he's assailed by what seem like must be dozens of cops and arrested. Karen knows this is happening. She sees it out the window, and you referenced this earlier. She flushes all the coke down the toilet. So he's arrested and brought in, and it was the DEA who was following him, and they've been on him for a month. We see the cops come in with Sandy and all the drug-covered shit from her apartment. So that's the payoff from her not being willing to use the dishwasher before. And Henry's in prison now. Karen comes to see him, and he's worried that Polly's going to have him killed, either in prison or out of prison for the drugs. So he needs to get out, and Karen gets her mom to agree to mortgage her house for Henry's bail, and he gets released. When he gets home, he intends to sell the drugs that he left, but Karen flushed them, as we mentioned a few seconds ago, and he's really, really upset because now he has no way to make money. He goes to apologize to Polly for lying to him, but Polly tells him he lied to his face and he can't trust him anymore. He kicks him out of the crew and gives him $3,200. And this is another moment here that I think is like just a really powerful way that Scorsese is able to do this kind of ethnographic storytelling. Another example of like you kind of see what you look into it to see. Paulie's really hypocritical. You know, it's like he doesn't want anybody to sell drugs, but he already made his nut. Like he already managed to get to the top in this older world where you didn't have to sell drugs to make enough money to get by. But like the world that they're living in is kind of different now. And like he's obviously right. You shouldn't sell drugs, but he has no sympathy for Henry, for like the fewer options that he might have available to him to kind of rise to the top of the ladder as Paulie has. And so we see the kind of rank hypocrisy of this world, even on Paulie's part. Someone who we know compared to the other characters is a relatively noble, relatively reasonable, honorable person. Great scene. Henry is super, super paranoid at this point, and Karen goes to see Jimmy, and he tries to get her to go in some door to ostensibly get something that she can sell to make a little bit of money for her and Henry. But she's spooked and refuses. It's unclear to the viewer whether Jimmy was trying to get her into some room where he was going to kill her, but she believes that he was. And she goes home and she's kind of in a panic about this having happened. And Henry goes to meet with Jimmy and is suspicious that he is going to kill him or have him killed. I wrote here in my notes that I really love how De Niro's look as Jimmy changes over the course of the movie.
Yeah,
and in this
nice.
final portion of the narrative, he's kind of coalesced into, I think, like one of the coolest looks a later middle-aged man can have.
Yes.
Where he's just wearing like a lot of really expensive suits. He has big, kind of big lensed, like very conservative older man glasses that he wears and like slicked back gray hair. And he looks so dignified and so cool at this portion of the film. Jimmy wants to send Henry to do a hit, but Henry remarks via narration that he's never been sent to do a hit by Jimmy before, and so he knows that Jimmy is going to have him killed if he goes to do this, and so he doesn't do it. Henry decides to turn state's witness. He and Karen go to talk to some FBI agent about the witness protection program. This agent was actually the agent who talked to the real Henry Hill. Did you know that?
I did know that, yes.
So I guess that I think Scorsese and maybe Ray Liotta went to talk to this guy to get a little bit of background on this experience. And the guy joked that he'd be happy to play himself if they wanted him to. And so they went away and decided they actually did want to do it. And they called him and asked him to, and he did. So this guy who plays this FBI agent was the actual FBI agent who did the WITSEC stuff for the real Henry Hill. Jimmy's arrested, Paulie's arrested, Henry flips, and Jimmy and Paulie are both convicted on his testimony. And he narrates that the hardest thing for him about all this was leaving the life. We see the narration assumed by Henry on the courtroom stand, and he walks off the stand and finishes his narration talking directly to the camera. And we see a final scene of him in witness protection in the suburbs. And the thing he says is that what he's most upset about is how ordinary his life is now. He just has to live like an ordinary guy. And the film ends. The end.
Wow.
So I want to take a little bit of time now to talk about the historiosity of the narrative. And so just some things that I'll share about this. This is considered very ethnographic in nature by Hollywood standards. This is a very true to life kind of exploration of a subculture. Wise Guy, the Pileggi book on which it's based, was written from a journalistic vantage point, not a novelistic vantage point, and was made up almost entirely of firsthand accounts that the real Henry Hill made to Pileggi, which Pileggi then cross-checked with court records, FBI files, and other witnesses. So he essentially treated the research that he did for the novel as journalism, and so it is extremely factually accurate, essentially treating Henry Hill as a primary source requiring verification. And I will draw contrast to another film as we come to the end of this discussion. Henry Hill existed. His general life and career trajectory are depicted extremely faithfully. Jimmy Conway is a fictionalized version of a real gangster named Jimmy Burke, and the way that the character is characterized and his broad arc are largely faithful to Burke's real life. Tommy DeVito is a fictionalized version of a real mobster named Tommy DeSimone, who is actually reputed to have been more volatile and violent and cruel than Pesci played him in the film. It's pretty incredible, honestly, that the real guy could actually be worse. Paulie Cicero is based on a guy named Paul Vario, who was really a capo in the family, and that is likewise a very faithful recreation of his real life. And the major events are real and depicted historically accurately. The Lufthansa heist and the purge that Jimmy did afterward all really happened. It really was the biggest heist in American history at the time. The real Tommy actually was murdered for killing the real Billy Batts, and Henry Hill really did flip after feeling, in light of the post-Lufthansa purge, that Burke was going to have him killed. And what I want to call out here finally is that I think what's really most important is that the way Scorsese editorializes this story is stylistic and not substantive. I talked about this a little bit throughout the recap, but I think what's really so amazing about this film and what Scorsese understands so much better than a lot of other filmmakers who tell these kinds of stories do is the compressing decades of a person's life in a richly textured and lived in world into 2.5 hours requires a tremendous amount of impressionist flourish. And the way that he does this, the way he does the pacing, the way he engages with narrative, narration, stream of consciousness vignettes, his cinematography, the editing, the extensive needle drops are how he manages to pack so much detail and such a richly textured life into only 2.5 hours, and manage to convey what I would describe as the truth of Henry's lived experience rather than the actual literal reality of it in such a short runtime. And it's really special. It's hard to think of anything that's ever done this as well as this does, honestly. It's got quite a storied legacy as a film. It's been repeatedly honored by the American Film Institute, ranked most recently 92 on its 100 Years, 100 Movies list, and ranked number 2 in the gangster subgenre after only The Godfather. Was preserved by the National Film Registry, celebrated repeatedly by prominent film critics and polls, especially Ebert. The cinematography and editing, particularly the Copa tracking shot and its use of Steadicam, as we discussed, were huge influences on many later films and television shows. And I think most importantly, as a discrete thing, it was the primary inspiration for The Sopranos, which is one of the most important works of fiction in storytelling history. Kind of kicked off the modern age of prestige TV. And so finally, I would note from just an analytic perspective, that I think that the way that Henry and Tommy and Jimmy are depicted is really salient, and they kind of occupy 3 important gangster archetypes. Tommy is pure emotion, Jimmy is pure rational calculation until he breaks at the end, and Henry is a weak putz, kind of caught somewhere in between the two of them. He doesn't have a strong enough character or perspective on life to stand for anything. And the film's documentarian journalistic truth-telling, combined with lack of operatic texture and the banality of its ending and Henry's response to it. I mean, Henry doesn't die, nothing really dramatic happens to him or anything. The tragedy from his perspective is just that he has to be a normal person now who doesn't get to feel like he's more important than he actually is. Cut a really strong contrast to its gangster film forebears, especially The Godfather. And the way Scorsese uses this contrast is to make a really strong statement about the culture. These people are repugnant, their lives and work are meaningless, and there's nothing to mythologize here. And there's really, I do like The Godfather better than I like Goodfellas, but I think there's really a lot of credit to be given to Scorsese here for having a moral clarity that a lot of people who told these kinds of stories before him didn't have. Mm-hmm. There is, I think, an urge to mythologize this world. It's really sexy, it's really romantic to get to be this powerful, but Scorsese exposes it for what it is. It's it's not worth it, It's just really bad, and there's nothing to celebrate about it. And that's really nice. I think it's a really special film. So, Mike, what did you think of Goodfellas?
Wow. Okay. Time for final ratings. Listen, I thought it was a great movie, and I'm landing on a soft 5-star rating. I think that, compared to other Scorsese films that we've seen for the podcast so far, that I've just seen in general, it didn't have the emotional effect on me that Raging Bull had. But I think it is, to a point that you made earlier, essentially Scorsese operating like he's going God mode in this film. This is him at the height of his power, and I think it's functionally perfect. The direction is so frenetic. It has almost this punk rock sensibility to it. It's very confident, and even though it's a long film, it never feels overblown, and that has to do with this very deliberate stylistic choice by Scorsese to rely on short, abbreviated scenes, so we cover Henry's entire arc without bogging the film down in minutia, or traditional structure, which I think is an issue that Scorsese gets into with some of his later works, like The Irishman, which we'll be watching later in the podcast. Oh, God, kill me.
Can you imagine?
No, I can't. The performances are obviously excellent. The use of music is incredible. In a lot of ways, it really felt to me like a more refined version of Mean Streets. I know that was your 5.5 or 6 star, whatever the fuck you like to say about films you really like film in this podcast. I only gave Mean Streets a 4 out of 5. It has the same obsession and similar themes, but Scorsese's direction is so much sharper, more disciplined, and more confident.
Yep.
So this just, to me, felt like Scorsese totally locked in. And it just has so many iconic moments and scenes. It makes you feel what Henry is feeling, both in the come up and the come down, in a way that is so rare for a film to manage. And I also just want to say that I love the cinematography of the film. You didn't really talk about it during your 1.5 hour long recap, but I like its use of the 1.85:1 aspect ratio, which I'm normally not a big fan of. I'm normally an anamorphic kind of guy, but the aspect ratio kept everything very intimate. I liked the use of naturalistic lighting and primary colors without over stylization, and it was just such a blast to watch. It was a real thrill ride of a movie, and saw 5 stars for me. Essentially perfect, but just didn't affect me on a very deep level emotionally. What about you?
Extremely well said. I don't know what I really have to add beyond what you said. I mean, I'm definitely also going to give it 5 stars. I'm surprised to say, though, that I kind of came out of it feeling the same way you did. Like, it's a pretty soft 5 star for me.
Yeah.
I recognize that it is functionally and technically perfect. It's obviously one of the greatest films ever made. It's Scorsese's best movie. I mean, like, what are you going to say? It's perfect. It's incredible. But I really, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier during the recap, I really struggled with the character of Henry. Now,
yes.
Like, I don't really know what to think about him. I think he is a fundamentally unlikable, unrelatable person. I remember when I was a kid, when I watched this movie, you could see a way to kind of relate to him. It's nice how he stands up for Karen when he pistol whips the guy. Like, we see him kind of use his violence in service of something actually good and worthwhile. And you can see that he's a little bit put off by the violence around him in a way that I think makes him a little easier to relate to. But I guess with the moral clarity that comes from being an adult now, that I've watched this in this context, that actually just makes him seem worse and weaker to me.
Yes.
Like, it's like the fact that he seems to have a little bit more to relate to, a little bit more humanity to see than characters like Tommy and Jimmy actually just makes me hate him more than them. Because, like, Jimmy earnestly doesn't get it. Like, he doesn't know that there's anything wrong with what he's doing. And so that makes him a little actually easier, I think, to sympathize with than Henry. It's like we can tell that Henry is constantly disgusted and put off by these things that he's participating in, but then he just keeps doing it. And I think what really drives home how little that works for me is then the fact that his reflection at the end of the film is not at all repentant. Like, he doesn't feel bad about anything that he's done. Even with having felt those feelings, his regret is just that now he has to be an average schnook or whatever he says. It's like, what is the point of this guy? Like, what is this character supposed to say?
I don't like a passive protagonist.
Yep. So it's a little bit rough. And I think that what's difficult about it is just that the film being so documentarian in nature and knowing that this is, a truthful depiction of this guy's life, I think he just was this kind of piece of shit. So, like, what are you going to say? I read online that Henry Hill himself was really disturbed by the film and by seeing kind of the way that he'd lived his life depicted in such stark terms. And I guess he probably would be, right? Like, it's like, what a monstrous guy.
Yeah. You think Jake LaMotta felt that way when he watched Raging Bull? He's like, this is what people think of me? I thought this was going to be a comedy.
Yeah, so fucking incredible movie. I absolutely love it, but I definitely, I'm a little softer now on it as I watch it at this stage in my life, and I have read online a little bit about this, that something that people really appreciate about it is that it ages with you. As you watch it at various points of your life, you'll see different things in it, and I felt that watching it this time, and so it made me enjoy it less than I did when I watched it when I was younger, but I think it makes me appreciate it more as a piece of art. It's really something very special that it can have that kind of effect. So yeah, great film. 5 stars all around.
Wow.
Mike, do you have anything that you would recommend in addition to Goodfellas?
I sure do. This week I'm going to recommend the 1993 Brian De Palma film Carlito's Way, which I watched for the
I've never
first
seen
time.
Carlito's Way.
Listen, man, I know because I checked Letterboxd when I made when I put the recommendation down on paper, so to speak. I have digital notes. I'm not, a fucking Neanderthal, but
It's Neanderthal.
I've heard it both ways. So this came out a few years after Scarface, and it's almost like a mirror image to Goodfellas. It stars Al Pacino as Carlito Brigante, a former drug dealer who's just released from prison. And he's older, he's tired, and he knows he has one last chance to go straight. So he has a modest dream. He just wants to get some legitimate money, leave New York City, and disappear into a normal life. But he keeps getting pulled back into danger by his lawyer and friend, played by Sean Penn, who's like totally erratic and out of control. And there's so much tension in the film that comes from knowing how hard it is to outgrow your reputation and your past. So I think that it works nice as a companion piece to Goodfellas. It's very stylish, very engaging film. Obviously, this is one of the great Brian De Palma films. And I think that they make a great double feature about momentum versus regret. So got to recommend Carlito's Way.
It's a great recommendation. I might watch it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if you ever actually did watch one of these, the same night that you say you're going to do it.
It would be crazy.
It's one of those bits that I think it's really like kind of overstayed its welcome because I've seen how few of my recommendations you've actually watched.
No, you're only saying that because we've been recording for so long. Anyway, that's a great recommendation. You were a lot less angry about it 2 hours ago when we were talking about it more jokingly.
I've been thinking about it since I compiled the data and I saw how many no's there were for my recommendations, my thoughtful recommendations that I make week in and week out to you and the citizens of De Niro Nation. What do you have to recommend this week, Mike?
Today, I would like to recommend the 2013 Martin Scorsese film, The Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, what?
I think that The Wolf of Wall Street is a natural companion piece to Goodfellas, and I think that how mediocre it is compared to Goodfellas really elevates Goodfellas, actually. Having watched The Wolf of Wall Street pretty recently, right? When Caroline and I watched that, maybe 3 months ago. It really made me appreciate Goodfellas more in spite of the flaws that I noticed with it this time for a few different reasons. So the first reason is The Wolf of Wall Street is too long. It's only like 40 minutes longer than Goodfellas, but it feels 2 hours longer. It feels like double the length, and it really struggles. You remarked on this as we kind of came to the end of the come up portion of my recap, that like those are the only parts of these films that you want to watch. But I think that the subsequent 2 acts of Goodfellas are intensely more enjoyable to watch than the kind of come down of The Wolf of Wall Street. And so much of that is, I think, the way the way the length is deployed very sparingly in Goodfellas. Another thing about Goodfellas that really works so much better for me than The Wolf of Wall Street is I think it's much more true to life. I know more about the worlds of business and finance than I do about the world of the mob. And I certainly know more about the kind of history of the abuses on Wall Street kind of leading up to the Great Recession than I do about mob life. The Wolf of Wall Street is fantastical. So much of what's represented in the film is not historically accurate, is not reasonable to think those things could actually happen. And I think so much of that is because Scorsese based The Wolf of Wall Street on Jordan Belfort, the main character of The Wolf of Wall Street's just non-documentarian autobiography of his life, essentially.
Hyping himself
up. And it's
up.
Just as right. It is so deeply flawed in a way that really enhances Goodfellas as a work of this kind of documentarian filmmaking. And it's much more well-done ethnographic nature than The Wolf of Wall Street has. But The Wolf of Wall Street is still a fun movie. It's worth watching. Leo's great. And I think it acts as kind of a little bit of a spiritual sequel to Goodfellas in a way. And so I would strongly recommend you watch it if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's funny. I watched it for the first time within the last couple of years, and I think I've been on record saying that it's essentially worse Goodfellas. And for so many reasons, because yes, the pacing is worse, the length is worse. I think that the lifestyle depicted in the film is both less exotic and less alluring than the mob lifestyle presented in Goodfellas, and the characters are less likable. As scary as Tommy and Jimmy are, I would much rather be hanging out with that group of people at the Copa than Jordan Belfort and cousin fucking Jonah Hill in The Wolf of Wall Street. It really didn't do it for me in the same way. So very interesting. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting companion to Goodfellas, but yeah, I don't know. I'll be interested to hear what the citizens of De Niro Nation think, if any of them ever pay attention to our recommendations.
I would love to hear from the citizens of De Niro Nation about this. Please write us about literally anything at ourherodeniro@gmail.com. Well, anyway, there you go. So I guess it's time for the roll. Mike, what are you hoping to roll this week?
Well, let me tell you, I updated the spreadsheet again. I removed all of the previously rolled films up until this point, so there's no chance to roll any duplicates. I'm hoping to roll Silver Linings Playbook, which is now number 41. So we're looking for 41.
Can you remind me, please, why is Everybody's Fine highlighted in red?
We're reserving that one for Christmas.
Oh, that's a Christmas film. Gotcha. Okay. Yep.
Well, it's as close as we can get to.
Right. It's what we have for our next Christmas
it's all
film.
we have. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and roll now. Fuck me. I rolled 51. The 2022 David O. Russell film, Amsterdam.
Well, I mean, you know, we got half of it, right? We wanted a David O. Russell film, right?
Yeah. Well, we wanted a specific David O. Russell film. We wanted it ironically. You know, I don't actually like the guy's films. Well, for those who don't know, this is a 2022 This is a 2022 mystery comedy thriller produced, written, and directed by David O. Russell. It stars Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, and John David Washington, the protagonist from Tenet, alongside an ensemble supporting cast. Based on the business plot, a 1933 political conspiracy in the U.S., it follows three friends, a doctor, a nurse, and a lawyer, who reunite and seek to uncover the act following the mysterious murder of a retired U.S. general. I did not watch this film when it came out, and I believe it had a mixed critical reception, so here we go.
No, actually, Wikipedia said it had a generally negative critical reception. The critics criticized Russell's screenplay and direction, as well as the lack of chemistry between Robbie and Tenet superstar John David Washington. So this movie sounds like it's going to be fucking terrible.
I can't believe I'm going to have to pay attention during this one.
It has Taylor Swift in it? Jesus Christ, this movie sounds horrible.
Is it short at least? Not real. Well, it's 2 hours and 14 minutes long.
Oh my God.
Well,
huge box office bomb. $31.2 million on an $80 budget or $80 million budget. That's pretty funny. Yep.
Tough roll on my part. But
what are you going to do? I think we're all going to have a nice time.
Yeah, I guess I'll be back next week with Amsterdam.
There you go. Very exciting. And with that, I would like to thank you, all of the citizens of De Niro Nation, for joining us week in and week out, and for all of your thoughtful letters. Just a reminder to please write us about literally anything at ourherodeniro@gmail.com. I'd like to thank you, Mike, for being my co-host and waiting patiently through my very long recap.
My pleasure.
I'd like to thank my lovely wife, friend of the pod, wife of the pod, Caroline, a.k.a. Bad Cree, for making our podcast beautiful art. I would like to invite you to please look at all of our social media accounts and all that other stuff. You can find them at allmylinks.com/ourherodeniro. And I already said it, but it bears repeating. We've said it like 7 times in the episode. Please write us letters at ourherodeniro@gmail.com. We miss having letters to read. And I hope that you will join us next week for a very special episode about Amsterdam. Thanks, everybody.
Please make it worthwhile for us.